Hi there, this is Robert Giorgione. I'm on Wandsworth Common in southwest London. I'm just about to go to one of my most favourite restaurants in London, a place called Chez. This used to be the original restaurant of Marco Pierre White, and it's one of London's favourite restaurants. It's got a great wine list, and I'm just about to go there for lunch. So this is the main entrance of Chez. I'm just about to enter and enjoy my lunch. Okay, so I'm here with Wregg from Les Cartes de Pyrene. He's just going to talk about the event here at Chez. Doug.
So we're having a wine matching event. It's sherries with a seasonal autumn menu, and all the sherries are from a bodega called Bodega Emilio Hidalgo, which is one of the oldest bodegas in Jerez. They're very strongly flavoured cherries. They're more wines than sherries as such, and I think we're going to find some very interesting matching problems. Not everything will work, but I'm really intrigued to see what people will find. And we've invited a bunch of sommeliers and a journalist, and hopefully get some good feedback on the way the sherries taste and react with the food.
It's going to be quite a challenge, isn't it? But I think sherry will be very versatile with the menu.
Yeah, I mean, sherries are remarkably versatile food wines. And Bruce has composed a menu which I think has very, very strong flavours. He's tasted the sherries and he's devised the menu on the basis of what he thinks will match with those sherries. But I think when we taste the sherries, we'll see they have sort of winey components, you know, tremendous acidity, structure, and actually they will really blend in with the food.
Thanks, Doug.
I should say the sherries of Bodega Emilio Hidalgo. We got the agency about a year ago, and we think the sherries are fantastic. And it's just more than sherry as far as we're concerned. I mean, sherries are wine, and wine is about, you know, it's about drinking and matching with food. And I don't think you can really understand sherries in isolation until you actually taste them with appropriately matched food. So we asked Bruce to devise a menu, to taste the sherries first, and then to devise a menu on the back of what he tasted. And being Bruce, he's gone for very sort of bold, strong, autumnal flavours on a nice summer's day. But I think they'll work pretty well, because the sherries are actually very strongly flavoured sherries, and they're not your classic, maybe refreshing, easy drinking style of sherry. There's a lot of work on the yeast in each of these examples. You know, a lot of work on the floor, and we'll see how the styles of sherry compare with each other, but also compare to other sherries that you may have tasted. One of the things I noticed when I went to Jerez a few years ago is that I visited several bodegas, and everything I thought I knew about sherry, I had to sort of unlearn, because every bodega has its own way of doing things. So there's no sort of, I mean, there are sort of certain things in common, but actually there's sort of, it's almost like recipes, like which date back a century or 2 centuries, and therefore the styles of sherry vary wildly. And they're actually, it's not just about fino, palo cortado, oloroso, whatever, but there are degrees of, you know, of freshness and richness and ageability. About Hidalgo itself, the Bodega Emilio Hidalgo was formed by Emilio Hidalgo, so good they named him twice, in the middle of the 19th century, and it's in the middle of the old town of Jerez de la Frontera, and it's a classic Andalusian construct of really, really thick walls, enormous windows, high open-beamed ceilings, which is sort of perfect for the maturation and blending of great old cherries. It's, as I say, it's quite an old bodega, and when they bought the Soleras, which dating back, and they still have Soleras dating back to the 1870s. And we'll be tasting later the 1874 Amontillado Viejo, which has some original, obviously the original, maybe a drop of the original Amontillado in the Solera. What else to say? The style of the basically they're in Jerez. So Jerez is not sort of compared to the other sort of towns in the region. You don't get so much floor, but they really want to go for sort of wines which have a beginning. They're aged under floor to begin with. All their wines, in fact, are aged under floor, which is quite unusual. and that actually gives the wines this a particular sort of saltiness. Other wines then develop and are oxidatively aged after that, but they all begin on Deflor, even the Oloroso. And so their cellars are laid out more sort of horizontally rather than stacked high, and the barrels are in stone. And this it's the sort of cooler, more sort of the sort of moister part of the cellar which promotes floor. Everyone knows what floor is, the sort of yeast, the thick yeast veil that forms the top of the sherry when there's humidity in the cellar. Okay, stylistically, as I mentioned, it's very important to see these as wines, as table wines. That's the way that Hidalgo see them, and wines to be matched with food. So we're going to try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wines and a mystery wine on top, and those wines have really quite a lot of bottle age or average age in them. And we start off with La Panessa. La Panessa is a Fino, we call it a Special Fino, and it's a Fino. Sorry, La Panessa, by the way, is the name of the vineyard. It's a single vineyard, old vine single vineyard, Palomino grape, of course. And in 40 years ago, they looked at their Celeras from 1961, and they decided to use really old Celeras to make their Fino, and then unusually to refresh the wine less often than you would normally refresh a Fino. So what you have here is an average age of minimum 15 years, which for a Fino, if you think of a Posada style, is usually 5 to 7 years average age, but this is over 15 years. And basically what you have here is a sort of almost like a semi-oxidative style of Fino. So a Fino with much more colour, much more texture, vinosity, and basically a Fino which you're not going to quaff, but you're going to have with food. And actually, unlike a lot of Finos, it's a wine you can actually open and leave in the fridge, and it'll still be absolutely the same. You won't move for over a month. So it's a wine which is great for restaurants, because I think when you think about Finos, if you don't destroy the bottle in a day or two, then you lose the point of it. You lose the freshness. This is a wine which doesn't major on freshness, despite the incredibly high acidity. It has so much structure that it's more than a Fino. Okay, I think the Fino is going to be poured now. Yeah. And that's it. What I'll do is then I will sort of pop up or even sit down, and between each course, just ask you what you thought of the wine and the match, and whether whether certain things stood out, or whether it was a match made in heaven, and then introduce the next wine to follow. Any questions? Just throw them at me. I can't guarantee to answer everything. Oh, and very quickly, just for pure frivolity, the aperitif wine was a Chapli Rosado from the Basque Country, from Getaria, which is the largest of the DOs in Chapli, which is about 20 kilometers from San Sebastian. It's really unusual. I think it's unique to have a rosé from the Chapli region. There's 99% of it's white and maybe 1% red. The wine's always bottled with a little bit of CO2, so they're a bit fizzy. But they're vinous still. There's wine underneath it. It's only 10.5%. It's a brilliant summer wine, a great aperitif. If you've ever been to the Basque Country, you'll see that everywhere they pour it from great heights and get the lovely pinky foaminess. And they're notable for their incredibly strong acidity. But the rosé's got a nice, lovely raspberry freshness, mild raspberry freshness, and I think it's really mouth-watering, and it's a great start to any meal. But it's a wine you can just have by itself, with olives or anchovies or tapas.